Hey everyone, welcome to the channel Pokéjaeger. This video is going to be a bit different. I'm not going to really open any packs or box or anything like that. I'm mainly focusing on the topic of grading your cards. I'm going to go through 8 things you should know about grading, at the very least from my perspective. I hope what I'm about to share with you next will give you value, and if it does, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. So I'm going to touch about the 4 main basic points that you should know about grading. They are basically centering, surface, corners and edges. These are the 4 criteria that grading companies use to grade your card. And let me talk about centering first. Now, first and foremost, you should know that centering itself, right, it's pretty much out of your control. It really depends on how the card is printed, or rather how was it cut when they are doing the cutting on at the factory manufacturing. So I'm going to give you some examples of decent centering and not so good centering. You take a look at these 2 cards. Just look at it real quick, right? I'm just gonna stay still real quick. If you can see these 2 cards, right, the card on the right, you can tell that it is fairly thick on the left, or thicker on the left than on the right. You can tell, you can quite easily tell, especially with yellow border cards. It's quite obvious. You can see that it's a bit heavy on the left than on the right. So this is an example of an off-center card. Now that being said, right, it really also depends on which company you're grading with. The norm now is that PSA do grade their centering a bit more leniently. A lot of people are saying that they go on a 60-40 rule, whereby if one side is 60%, one side is 40%, they will still count it as a fairly good center card. But I honestly don't think this is a good center card, because it's obviously way off centered, pretty much more heavy on the left than on the right. Now compared to this card, compared to this other card, you can tell that it's not as badly off-centered. This card, it's definitely slightly, ever so slightly heavy on the left than on the right. And if you want to, if I were to send one of these 2 cards to grade, I'll probably send this one, if let's say I'm looking for a better center card than the one on my right. So this is I don't think this will pass the 60-40 rule. Like, this is more like, I don't know what is this. This is like at least 80-20, I reckon. So that's one thing to know about. Now, centering on the front of the card is important, but it's also very important on the back of the card as well. Now, typically when it's off-center to the front, it will usually be off-center at the back as well. So now this is off-center on the left, whereby the left is heavier. If I flip over to the back, if you can tell, right, the right side is much heavier on the left as well. Now this sort of mirrors what the front is. But I have seen cards that are quite centered in the front but off-centered at the back. So you might want to take note of that, because they do look at centering at the back, if I'm not mistaken. The other thing that you should also note about is not just looking at the left and right, but also top and down, right? That means the top and the bottom, they also look at the centering of that. Now I'm showing you these 2 cards as an example. If you can take a quick look, right, the card on the left is very heavy on the top. You can tell that this is extremely heavy on the top than on the bottom. Although this left and right is fairly centered, but because it's heavy on the top, this would count as an off-centered card. And this is pretty extreme. You can see it's very visibly thicker on the top than on the bottom. So this probably won't pass the centering test. Now, as opposed to this is slightly better, I would guess, but this is actually more heavy at the bottom. You can see the card. You see how much heavier it is on the bottom than on the top. And on the back is similarly as well. You can tell that it's pretty much heavier at the bottom and the top. So when you look at centering, you gotta look at all four edges, so to speak, to make sure that is trying to be as centered as possible, right? So that's on centering. That's point number one. Point number two, surface. Surface, it also sort of not controllable to the extent, because one thing you can't avoid is print line. So I have this vintage Umbreon card from the Neo series. I want to show you this. If you see this section here, I want to show you the print lines. Can you see that? Can you see those 3 lines there? You see the 3 lines right here? Now this is factory print lines. You can't avoid this. If it's there, it's there. This would actually affect your grading for surface, because this is obviously not a good surface card if just by looking at the print lines. Now that being said, right, there are controllable factors as well. When you pull a card that you think you might want to grade, straight away pull it and straight away sleeve it, right? This is to prevent the card from getting any sort of foreign damages or unwanted damages to the card, because you never know, right? If you rub the card against something, you probably do some scratches on the hollow, and that's where you can fail in your surface, right? So just keep that in mind. That's point number 2. Point number 3, corners. I'm going to show you another card. So corners, let me see. Let's take this card. All right. So I'm going to show you, like, corners is something that you can't control as well, because there are 2 things, right? Corners is also depending on how the card is cut as well. You want to have a corners of the card that you pull that has an even rounded shape. Like this is a good example, I think. You see how nicely rounded it is, how evenly rounded it is. And if you see this card, the Sylveon alternate art, you see this top left corner here, you see how there's a point at where the card is turning downwards, and there's this point here. Now this is obviously not a greatly cut corner, and this would help you actually fail in the corners category. You can tell on the right side that this is a lot better cut than on the left, right? So this is just one example. So yep, that's for corners. And last but not least, you would have edges. Now edges, more often or not, is also a controllable item. Like I said, if you have a card that you really want to grade, just sleeve it up right away, because handling of the cards would also if you don't handle it gently, and if you don't protect it as soon as you pulled it, you're probably gonna end up with edges that are worn out, and you can call that whitening. So this is an example of edges, right? I want you to focus on the top. Okay, you see this part here? This edges is pretty clean. You can see how everything is very neat, very crisp, I would call it. And if I compare it to this card, unfortunately the Dragonite V alternate art, you can tell that the print here is not too good. You can tell it's not as clean as this card. You can see it's not as clean. So this, unfortunately, when I pulled it, is already there, and this would actually help you, or rather this would actually unfortunately score lower in the edges category. So it really depends on, like this. There's another example on the bottom right. You can see the bottom right here, right? Look at how clean this card is on the right, and on the left you see there's this white sort of like marking here. That will fill the edges category, right? So when you want to handle a card, you do not want to actually hold it by the edges as much as possible. Once you pulled it and you feel that it's a card that you might want to grade it, I would strongly suggest you pinch it like this without touching the edges, because the edges of cards can be very sensitive, especially the older cards whereby it's it's very much paper, right? So to try to pinch it and put it in a sleeve as much as possible. So that's for ages. So those are again the 4 big categories of you know of the criteria that grading companies will want to grade. Now this is an example of a card that I recently sent to grade through Travis Flip. You can tell that, you see, for CGC, one of the grading companies, and I'll go to that in a bit, right? I'll go to the grading companies in a bit, but this is just another example. The centering, surface, corners, and edges, they score all this, and all these grades on average will give you a master grade. This scored a 7.5. It scored 9 for the centering. So let's just take a look at the centering. You can tell from the left to the right is slightly heavier, and on the top as well. If you look at the top, the top is like obviously heavier than the bottom. So that's probably the main reason why it's got 9 on the centering instead of a 10. If I go to the back, it's gonna probably be the same thing. Not as obvious to the back, but you can tell that the top is pretty much heavier than the bottom. Right? Surface, this is a very old card. I actually got this off the secondary market. There are visible scratches on the hollow foil. I don't think you can see it through the camera. I'll try to do my best to show you, but there are visible scratches on the card, and CGC apparently is very strict about surfaces, and that's probably why it got a 6.5. Corners itself, 8.5. You can tell there's a whitening here that probably helped score the corners lower, but you can see the top right here, right? If you look at the left and the top right, you can tell that this corner is much more well-rounded than this. This is a bit more curvy on the top, and it then curled down very differently, not as even. You can tell just by staring at it. So that's probably the reason why this scored 8.5 for corners. And for edges, likewise, it really depends on whether you're whitening or not. There's a bit of whitening here and there, and it is an old card. So honestly, I'm quite happy that it scored a 8.5 with edges. If it didn't score 9 and 8.5 for 9 for centering and 8.5 for corners and edges, right, this whole card will probably be 7 or below, because surface did bring down the card rating, so to speak. Yep. So that's just one example. Let's put this guy right here. Right. So I touched on the 4 big points on the basic fundamentals that you should know about the different criteria that they're scoring on. You can definitely use the naked eye to judge for yourself, but I believe BGS and CGC do use some kind of technology to measure out the cards, especially on the surfaces, where scratches may not be absolutely visible to the naked eye. So the 5th item that I want to talk about is like how you handle your cards, right? Like I said, once you get a card that you really like, make sure you sleeve it, and how you handle it, again, pinch it. As soon as you don't keep grabbing the card like this. A lot of people like to grab the card like this because when you are pulling the card from the packs, right, you probably want to hold it like that, and you slowly pull one by one till you get your hit card, right? But by doing this, right, you are increasing the contact surface on the edges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers on the edges. That actually does increase the chances of you damaging the edges of the card, especially with the corners. We all like to hold a card by the corner unknowingly with your pinky finger. So what I will usually do, if you've seen some of my videos, and once I got a card that I think I might grade, or at the very least want to keep it in the best condition possible, just pinch it very gently on the side. When you want to turn it, just pinch it, right? And after you sleeve it, put in a top loader or sleeve or card saver. That would give additional protection to the card. So you should be very mindful of how you handle the cards and be as gentle as you can with them, because ultimately these are all paper, these are all cardboard. very expensive cardboard, right? So you definitely want to handle them with the utmost care. So that's point number 5. Point number 6, why do you grade? This is more on the intangible side of things. There are basically 2 reasons why people want to do grading. First and foremost, grading does truly increase the value of your card, because you are essentially encapsulating the card in a protective case. And with the grade itself, and depending on the company you're grading with, right, it does give you additional value to the card. But that's just one of the reasons. The other big reason why you want to grade the card, essentially you love the card and you just want to protect it. That's one great way to do it, is to send it to a grading company and basically just put it in a slab, and you can keep this forever. Essentially the card is forever protected. It will usually be in the same state as when the card was put in. And yeah, and obviously with the slab itself, there's this plastic protector itself that came with. Yep, it protects the slab itself. So really, just those are the 2 main reasons: grading to possibly increase the value of your card, and 2, basically to create a time capsule and protecting your card in perpetuity, unless you want to break it open. Right, so that's point number 6. Why do you want to grade the card? Do ask yourself that question. If you can't answer either one of the questions, you probably shouldn't spend money grading any card. Point number 7, grading companies. Obviously, there are a few options. We have PSA, we have BGS, Beckett, and we have CGC. CGC is the one that is this card actually. So I'm gonna rank them into 3 categories: price, speed, and value. I'll start with PSA first. It is no secret that PSA is actually the OG of grading. They have been around for very long. Their slabs are actually worth some value in the marketplace in terms of long-term holding power, in terms of the slabs itself. But the price of it is obviously quite expensive. I mean, because of COVID, unfortunately they don't do any bulk grading anymore at this point in time. And now to grade a card, you need to spend at least $150 USD, or just very simply above $200, depending on who you're grading with, or rather who are you going with as a service provider to grade with PSA. Well over $200 SGD. So from a price standpoint, it's definitely I'm gonna give it like a one star, right? 3 stars is definitely means the more value for money. Speed, speaking in the context of grading from Singapore, you gotta send the card to the US, right? And that takes time. It also takes time for them to grade. Again, because PSA is one of the main companies that people grade with, a lot of people still send their cards to grade, and it does take a substantial amount of time for them to get back to you. More than a month at the minimum. Could be 2, could be 3. It really depends on how fast they turn things around. But on top of that, you got to send the card back, and they got to send the card back. So there's a lot of lead time in it. So in terms of speed, I'll give it a 1 star as well. And for value, right? So again, PSA, OG, any card that is typically graded, say a PSA 10, would have a very, very high value, higher than most other branded cards, brand of grading company cards. So there is no doubt that I'll give it a maximum of 3 stars in this case, because you do get the kind of value that you typically want from a card that's being graded and slapped away. So that's for PSA. BGS is going to be very similar. However, the one thing that you should very well know is that BGS as well as CGC actually does grade their cards very, very strictly. They are not as lenient than PSA for some reason. And for that reason, you might want to really consider BGS only if you think that you have the perfect card. and even though you think you have the perfect card, you may not necessarily get back a BGS 10. And a BGS 10, there is the one and only black label, whereby you score 10 in each and every category, and then they'll give you a black label. That is obviously the holy grail of any graded cards, but it's extremely hard to get. So this is going to be priced similarly to PSA. I'm going to give it a 1 star as well for pricing. It's going to take the same amount of time in terms of speed. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 1 star as well. And for value of money, it's probably going to be, like I said, right? The ironic thing is that a PSA 9 for the exact same card is going to be probably higher priced than a BGS 9 for some odd reason. So if you really want to send the card to BGS, you might want to make sure you get the highest grade possible, the highest quality card that you can get possible. So in terms of value, I'm gonna give it like a 2, maybe a 2 star, because of the how the market sees the value of those cards. Again, BGS as well, they do provide subgrades. PSA doesn't. I don't know whether that plays a part into the value. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It really depends on the perspective of the person that's holding on to that slab. But purely because a BGS 9 is gonna and below 89876, it's gonna probably be lower value than a PSA, with the exception of the BGS 10. Then that's the reason why, or even a BGS 9.5. For that reason, I would give the value a 2 star. Now, the third company, the most used company so far and fairly new in the market, is CGC. Price is definitely very good. It's definitely cheaper than BGS and PSA. You could send cards. The price of grading a card with CGC is between $20 to $50 USD. Again, it depending on the rate of services that you want, but it's definitely of a better quality, better pricing. So I'll give it a 2. Why not a 3? Is because you are still paying USD for grading a card, and again, speaking in Singapore's context, you gotta then convert as currency exchanges and whatnot. That's the reason why I give it a 2. Now for speed, they're actually a bit quicker than PSA and BGS. I think they're trying to be better in the market, and for that reason, I think they do turn around cards at a faster pace, maybe a month or less. Definitely faster than PSA and BGS. So I'm gonna give it a 2 star for this. And in terms of the value, right? So the value of CGC, unfortunately, is not. Although they are as strict as BGS, some say, the value of the slab is nowhere close, not very close to either PSA or BGS. So for that reason, I'm gonna give it a 1 star. It really depends on what you really want to get out of it. If you are comfortable, if you're not comfortable with spending 150 USD on either one of the former companies, and you much rather just spend 50 or less with CGC, and you would prefer the quicker turnaround time, then definitely CGC will be the one that you go to. But do keep in mind that from the value perspective, you're not going to get a whole lot out of it. But you know, it's still a very nice graded card. I mean, blue on blue, as Travis said, like this is a very very nice card. Looking at it in a slab, in a CG slab, because it's like blue on blue, it's really cool. Okay, so I want to talk about something else in terms of grading companies. The day that I'm actually recording this is actually the same day that CAG, otherwise known as Cardsandgrading, is a local Singapore establishment recently started by one of our local hobbyists. And yeah, he essentially opened up a grading company in Singapore. I mean, why not, right? The Pokemon community is super strong in Singapore. There's so many people that's into this hobby in Singapore. You can tell by how fast the products sold out in the Pokemon company in Singapore. Like it's crazy. right? Now, CGC, although it's a brand new company and nowhere near as established as the other three that I mentioned, you have to consider some other important factors, because right now, at the time of this video, to grade a card, it is priced at $20 SGD. I think that's a super value for money. So for price, I'm going to give it a 3 stars, because I'm probably going to send a few cards to them purely because I want to encapsulate the cards in a slab. And if I can do it for $20, I'm gonna do it. And it doesn't hurt to support a local business, right? So local entrepreneur. So definitely giving a 3 stars for that. Speed. Again, we're grading with someone in Singapore. I literally can meet up with the owner and pass him the cards and probably get it back in less than 3 weeks. I don't know that for a fact. I'll probably send some cards and do another post-grading video after that. But I'm gonna give it a 3 stars, because it's definitely gonna be a lot faster than any of the three grading companies that we talked about before. Now, in terms of value, likewise, it is not gonna be of a very high value in terms of cards in a slab. We definitely they definitely cannot compete for value for PSA or BGS or even with CGC. So for value, I'm going to give it a 1, realistically speaking, objectively speaking. However, if you think about it, right, you're getting, if you look at the star counts in total, right, CGC you're getting, again, this is my own perspective. You may disagree, you may disagree, this is entirely up to you. Everyone got their own perspective. But if you count the number of stars there is, right, there is the most number of stars in my book at CAG, because we get 7 stars if you consider all these factors, right? If the others like PSA, you get 5 stars, BGS you get 4 stars, CGC you get 5 stars. So if you want to do some like point system, right, CAG is probably one that you really want to consider, unless you are strictly grading your card for the purpose of getting it at a high valuation. Then obviously don't go with CGC. Wait for a couple of months, pay the 150 USD and send to PSA. So that's my take. I'll link CAG social in the description below, but I think most of you have probably heard about this grading company in Singapore by now. Very excited that we have someone doing this in Singapore. I can't wait to send my cards to them for grading. I can't wait to do actually a specific video on how their slabs look like, goods and bads and whatnot. Yeah, so that's actually is on point number, where are we? Point number 7, right? Point number 7 of grading companies. So I just want to very quickly go back to point number 6 now that we talk about point number 7. Why do we grade, right? I personally grade because for a number of reasons. Like as a hobby in Pokemon, right, you definitely want to have some graded cards within your collection, because honestly this looks so much better in a slab, in a CGC slab, than in a, say, a top loader or a card saver, right? You could obviously, bypass all the grading and just put it in the magnetic casing. That's fine as well. If you like that, go for it, right? But my personal take is that I definitely want to, have some graded cards for my collection, cards that I really like. Like this is one of them. I managed to pick this beauty of a card up, 1999 Wizard base set, Unlimited Charizard Holo. This is definitely one card that I'm extremely happy to have, and it's in quite a good condition actually. Now, because it's a Charizard and because I definitely want to get this of a high value as possible, I'm probably going to send this card to PSA. That's the reality of it, right? And PSA have a, I don't own any PSA slabs. I would like it if my first PSA slab was one that I personally sent myself for grading. or at the very least use someone locally who does this kind of grading services to PSA, yeah, definitely want to do that. And I'll probably do it after this video. I'm gonna send this card to PSA, get it graded, you know, see what comes back. I think that's gonna be an exciting video to do. And you know, value aside, this is nowhere near as highly valuable, but honestly, this is also why I might want to grade this, because this is just a lovely card to look at. If you see closely, right, if you see closely, there's a swirl. You see there's a swirl there? I just find that that's so awesome that the swirl is right at the mouth of Tyranitar. I think this is just an awesome card to slap away and just keep it forever, because this is just something that I like, you know. May I go for PSA? I might, because I think having the red border for PSA is going to go very well with the red background of this card. Now, mind you that if I'm going to spend $150 to grade this card will probably not come back as a PSA 10. I don't think so, because you can tell that there is a few white nicks here, right? I think the centering can be a little bit better. You can tell that it's pretty bottom heavy than the top, and a bit heavy on the right. Like, it's not perfect. Oh, the front looks alright. The centering wise, front looks alright, but the back is a bit off, right? And there's very obviously whitening there. Don't know whether this will come back as a PSA 10. Let's say if it comes back as a PSA 9. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think this would be valued in the markets as much as the price that I paid for the card as a single and to send to PSA. But that doesn't matter to me, because this is the why. Ask yourself why you want to grade a card, because I really love this card, and I would basically keep this forever. And I would, if I want to keep this forever, would I want to spend a bit of money? Not a bit, but maybe quite some sum of money to grade this? Yes, I will. I probably won't send them together, because that would really break my wallet. I might want to send them like a couple of months apart, just so I can control my expenses. Pokemon, it is a very expensive hobby nowadays days, as I think most of you can relate. So yeah, just want to share my 2 cents with you. The last and final point, the 8th point, which is I think the most important point that I want to share with you guys, is that you ultimately want to enjoy. Ultimately, right, this is a hobby. This is a hobby that all of us could enjoy. And if you want to grade it, you know, you should have fun with it. You should feel excited about it, right? Like, if you don't enjoy grading at all, like even if you're purely a value grader, whereby you just want to grade cards, get them at a high value, and see how much you can fetch for them, that's totally fine as well. That is part of the hobby. There's a whole reason why grading company exists, because there is a market for it. The market wants it. The market is willing to pay for it. You can and you know, it's just the way it is. You gotta enjoy the process. If you don't really enjoy the process, then why bother? Why weighing yourself down? Why making yourself not happy, right? Just to grade for the sake of grading, right? So that's really the ultimate point number 8, the last point that I want to drive at you guys, sharing my thoughts transparently. Yeah, just enjoy it. Like, okay, so this gonna wrap this video up with these 2 Rayquaza that I pulled. If you haven't seen how I pulled it, do check out my earlier videos. It's quite sick of how I got these cards. But yeah, I just want to like show these cards to you side by side, and just take a moment, and let's say that I want to send one of these cards for grading, right? Which would you send? Just take a second to take a look. Here's the front, okay, and here's the back. You can pause the video if you want to take a look. You can zoom in and whatnot. Okay, let me give you my thoughts. Now, first and foremost, centering. One of this card is more off-center the other. If you haven't know it by now, it's this card. this card is a bit off center than this card. Now if you see this card, I can't really tell the top and bottom because the top is non-existent, but the bottom part you can see is here. But left to right, it's fairly balanced. Like it's very balanced. There's nothing else I can say that will say that otherwise. But if you compare to this card, if you look at it again, if you look at this card just by itself, it is definitely very heavy on the left and on the right. So that's one of the factors that you have to consider. If I want to send one of these cards just by looking at it right now, I'll probably send the one on the left because it's better centering. And again, centering is something that you can't control. It really depends on how they cut the cards, right? So I'm going to go back to this off-center card if I take a look at the back. Unfortunately, you can see there's a white dot here on the right, and that will not score well. That will not help with the grade well. And also a white dot on the bottom right here. Unfortunately, when I put this card, the dots is already there. Apparently the card wasn't cut fully and there's this thing that was sticking out, and that's the reason why it caused the white dot. So again, this is gonna help score lower, pull the grade down for either the corners or the edges because there is some whitening there and it's off-centered. Now compared to this card, just going to the back real quick, I just show you the corners, right? Just show you the corners here. No whitening, no white dots, no whitening. It's quite a clean card. And if I were to send this card for grading, like I think I will get a pretty good grade for it. At least a 9. If let's say I'm sending PSA, at least a 9, right? Yeah, so just to share with you another example of how you should look at your cards and compare them up and probably help you decide on which card you might want to send for grading. Okay guys, that's it. So I hope you enjoy this video. Is a bit different from my usual video. If you like it, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you can subscribe to my channel. That really helps me a lot. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.